And just like that, 2024 became last year and 2025 began. How is your relationship with celebrating New Year's Eve and welcoming the new year? If you are a survivor of trauma, it is possible that you couldn't wait for that new year to roll around because you might have been experiencing an increase in hoovering attempts or more trauma and abuse during the holiday season. Personally, my relationship with the new year has been complicated and it has evolved throughout the years. And this particular year, I tried to begin new rituals and a new way of making that celebration my own. I know that a period of transition can actually be one of the things that can make survivors very vulnerable to these toxic and abusive relationships. Usually a period of transition is when someone can swoop in with some love bombing and some performative empathy and distract you from some other problematic behaviors. And all this to say that for this host, definitely, and probably for a lot of listeners of this podcast, New Year's Eve can be quite complicated. And today I want to focus on that piece. What does it mean to say farewell to a year? What does it mean to say hello to a new year? And how we can start reclaiming going through these transitions. Hi, I am Raysa, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And you are listening to Hello Trauma Brain, a podcast where I share my experiences living with complex PTSD. My hope is this podcast can help destigmatize mental health and provide support for anyone diagnosed with C-PTSD who thinks they might have it or has a loved one with this diagnosis. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed psychologist or mental health care professional, and this podcast is not meant to replace nor substitute the care of psychologists, other mental or medical health care professionals. If you think you might have complex PTSD or PTSD, please reach out to your primary care or mental health care provider. Any individuals or resources mentioned in this episode are not sponsoring Hello Trauma Brain. This episode may reference trauma or abuse, and listener discretion is advised. Remember, you can always pause or skip this episode at any time. And now, let's get back to the episode. Hello, dear survivors, and welcome to this episode of Hello Trauma Brain. Thank you so much for joining me today. So this is officially the first episode of 2025. And also this episode will be wrapping up the first half of season 2 of Hello Trauma Brain. It's not going to be a very long hiatus, and I'm going to set up the same intention as last year, which was about 3 to 4 weeks of no new episodes coming out, and then I will resume the second half of the season. I am finding an urge to continue because it kind of felt like I took a very brief hiatus already during the holiday, and a part of me is like, let's just get going. The year started, let's go. But I'm going to try to fight that urge and still allow myself to have a few more weeks of not having to actively work on an episode that's going to be released, and instead focusing on a little bit of prep to get myself sorted so the second half of the season is not as overwhelming. Also work on some things that I want to work on for myself, for my own healing in particular. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. I feel like there's always an asterisk when dealing with setting intentions as a human being, and in particular, more asterisks come when you have trauma on top of that. And what I mean by this is, the intention is to like get ahead, but I'm very aware that that could completely tank and something could happen, and the time that I should be quote unquote spending getting ahead might be going towards whatever the heck comes my way in the next few weeks. But we will see. I will take it as it comes. So quick check-in. So the night of the 23rd of December, I started to feel sick again. That felt very discouraging and hopeless to me because I really was hoping to spend the holiday as decently as possible. But instead, by Christmas Day, I was in it. And at first, it seemed like a cold. and I was taking some over-the-counter stuff, and it was doing the job. And then things started turning around. It was around the Friday of that week. And at that point, by the weekend, I was in an urgent care, actually a week ago. And actually, let me throw that piece before I continue. Human beings, I know that we're notorious for not being great with our perception of time, but for me this past week, like, it's been completely like flipped on its back. Like, I still am having a hard time coming to grasp the fact that a week ago I was really fucking sick at an urgent care that was packed to the wazoo because a lot of people are sick right now. And here I am a week later, like, feeling pretty much recovered. I will say the meds they gave me worked like a charm. Within hours, I was feeling so much better. So I'm glad I went. I did do something a little different this time. And I realize this might be a little controversial. And before I even share it, I want to say, please, see an actual doctor. This is not a alternative or replacement in any way, but something that I did, I forget how I came across this. I probably during one of my Google searches on my symptoms to see if I should have been going to the urgent care or not, I came across like a chat GBT, like an artificial intelligence doctor thing. And please stay with me. Let me get to the end. I am not saying that artificial intelligence has taken over the medical field by any means. I will say I'm one of those people when it comes to artificial intelligence. I'm holding two things as true. I can see and appreciate the benefit it can bring to a lot of things to have this technology. And also, there are some things you cannot program into something. So I fully believe that it won't completely replace the human experience because we're just so complicated. And going back to my check-in, so doing my search, I run into this chat GBT thing for like a doctor, and I kind of plugged in my symptoms, and I came out with a cold. That was like towards the beginning, and I have to say it kind of matched how I was feeling. So I was like, okay, this is good in terms of, I don't need to seek any immediate care right now. I think I should be good with my over-the-counter. Then I did it a few days later. And here's my key takeaway with using that technology as a trauma survivor that struggles a lot with kind of realizing what's happening in her own body. For starters, I will say the thing was pretty accurate both times. The second time, it actually pointed out to a high likelihood of having bronchitis that was starting to develop into pneumonia. And even down to the medications that it was recommending, that's exactly what I was given at the urgent care. I did not tell the urgent care. I had done the AI thing, and I kind of had an idea of what I should have been getting prescribed. I just kind of went and described my symptoms and let them do their job. But yeah, it was a bit eye-opening and a little freaky. It's like, damn, like this thing. It was pretty weird. I will say one thing that I liked about doing that little thing online was the system kept asking me about other things. So as a trauma survivor who has been gaslit most of her life, I can say that I spend a lot of time inside my own head, at this point gaslighting myself. So I am one of those people that it takes me a while, especially with gradual changes, to notice them. I tend to focus on the most severe symptom, and I completely miss the fact that I'm having other symptoms along with it. So the way it helped me was I'm describing my initial symptoms, what I think is relevant and important to let it know, and it would follow up with more questions that would get me to think about other parts of my body that I was completely dismissing. Like, for example, I'm describing the cough and the congestion, and then it's asking about my chest. Like, how is your chest? Do you feel any pressure? Is it hard to breathe? And I'm like, holy shit, it is. And there were other symptoms that it was like asking me about that were not actual symptoms. So I was like, okay, I'm not there yet. I guess that's good. But it definitely helped me make a more comprehensive list of what I was actually experiencing. And that I found very helpful when I went to the urgent care, because I went with a written list of my symptoms. And I think that gave the medical team that was seeing me a little bit more information to help me in a more efficient way. So the good news is that I am recovered, knock on wood. I hope to everything and a half that I don't get sick again for a while, because I've had it with being sick. And yeah, here we are, episode 52. So officially, I want to say to you, happy/gentle new year to you. I hope that you're doing okay. I know this is a hard time for us. I have to say I felt a sense of relief, almost like oh, thank goodness the season is over. I'm so ready to go to the just like regular time at this point. So yeah, it's a little surreal, but 2025, it's already at full force. All right, so let's get into this week's episode. Let me start off by giving you a bit of a background on my own relationship with New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So I grew up in Puerto Rico, and over there, New Year's Eve is actually a really, really scary night. Growing up there, I haven't lived there in many years, and I am not aware of whether this has improved or not. I really hope it does. Something tells me it might still be an issue, but my recollection from living there in terms of New Year's Eve revolves around having a lot of fear. There is this thing people do in the island when it hits 12, and it is grabbing their guns and pointing them at the sky and shooting a few rounds to celebrate the year. And those bullets come down. And we call them balas perdidas, which is lost bullets. And people have been severely injured from these lost bullets. People have sadly died from these bullets. And there's a lot of campaigning preceding the weeks before New Year's Eve in terms of please don't do this. Remember last year we lost all these people and the year before, and please keep yourself and your family safe. Even if you think you're in a remote area, you never know where that bullet's going to travel or who's going to be out there. There's a lot of campaigning and promotion to discourage people from doing this, and it's pretty hyped up, and it's very scary sounding, and it is very scary. It was quite a severe problem, and I was terrified. As the nighttime would come, if you saw someone like standing outside, there would be so much fear. And I would hear a lot of like, they better get back in, they're going to die. And nobody go near the windows and everybody stay inside. And I've always been that person who, honestly, if you tell me that if I touch a wall 3 times, I could potentially drop dead, I'm never going to touch that wall 3 times. I don't have much of a challenging, rebellious bone in terms of stuff like that, where the potential consequence could be my own life or the life of somebody else. And yeah, you did not need to tell me twice to stay inside and not go near windows. I was not doing it. So many years, that was how I would farewell the year. And I remember hearing people shoot their guns off in the distance, and there's a particular difference with an actual gun sound and a lot of hypervigilance. Now thinking back, you're paying extra attention during those last hours of the year and once it hits 12, those few hours after. So I went from New Year's Eve being potentially a lethal day for me and my loved ones, and then after college, around that time, that's when I started doing more of the full-time musician gig thing. And I've been doing this for years. I've been in different bands, and basically being a singer in a party band means, you get booked a lot for weddings, private parties, restaurants, festivals, things of that nature. And actually New Year's Eve is a really big day for working musicians. If you are in a band, or even for DJs, I would say, like that's basically a working day. So even if I had off technically from my day job, or if the place had like a half day and you get dismissed early, for many years that was still a working night for me. So for me, it would be about taking those hours that I would get off from my day job to get ready so I could be at the gig for the New Year's Eve. At least one time there was a gig where the band got rooms with the hotel that booked us, so we didn't have to travel back that same night. But for the most part, though, that's a night that you work through late and you have to travel back that same night. And it's just such a washout. I will say it did help me to reclaim more of a joy and a sense of celebration with New Year's Eve, because I would see people celebrating, and I would see people out and wearing like the hats and the glasses and all the sparkly stuff, and I would wear like a sparkling dress and basically sing and dance around and play with my friends for a few hours and get paid for it. I mean, it's also a good paying gig too, for whatever it's worth. And when it hits 12, we would sing Auld Lang Syne, and, you hug the musicians. And there was a sense of camaraderie there that I didn't experience growing up. So it was a helpful thing for me. But here's the thing. I'm still technically working. I'm still the entertainment for the people who are off and celebrating. And it would kind of wreck the next day for me in terms of I was exhausted. If I worked on New Year's Eve, by the time I got home, the next day, that New Year's Day, you wake up like feeling in a haze. The whole day is it's basically a blur because you're so tired and your body's feeling all the adrenaline and all the movement. And, like with these bands, I historically don't tend to gig with bands that have roadies. So like that means we're wrapping the cables, we're carrying things. There was a lot of setting up, tearing down. And it was it's a busy day. And a fun bit to know about New Year's Eve in terms of the music world, that tends to be a bit of a criteria or way to measure how well the booking is going for a band. And what I mean by that is, if you're working on a party band and the party band doesn't have any New Year's Eve gig, like around the time when the fall rolls in, something's off. Like that tends to be an indication that like either something's going in the industry and like nobody's booking, or the band's having an issue with getting booked for that day. Like it's basically like a bit of a badge of honor for the band to be like, oh, we're doing so well, we got our New Year's Eve gig booked like 2 years in advance or a year in advance. Oh yeah, they booked us back in March. Like I've heard other colleagues kind of use that as a bit of legitimizing that they're in a band that's doing well. So recent years, and I want to say I didn't do 2019 New Year's Eve, and then COVID hit, so nobody was doing New Year's Eve that year in 2020. And then after that, I don't think I've done a New Year's Eve gig again. It was close last year. Last year I did one a few days, but it wasn't a New Year's Eve gig. It was a wedding. It was like the 20-something. So for a few years, including this year, I didn't do anything. I didn't go out. I didn't gig. I was here and at home. And wow, I'm noticing right now as I'm talking that I still have some of that fear. Like if I get invited to a party, I would be hesitant to go out there in case that there is a lost bullet. I still carry some of that. And even gigging, I want to say that I would actually try to delay heading out after the gig was done in ways of like, okay, like if I can start driving a little bit later, maybe like half hour later, there's a less chance that other people are still shooting out there or, doing any celebrations that could put my life potentially in danger. And gosh, that's I'm realizing now that that's definitely just conditioning from before, because I don't think that's ever been, at least I don't hear about that being a problem in the area where I live. So wow, stuff runs you, doesn't it, huh? Interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, so I think that's enough context for you to understand how complicated my relationship with New Year's Eve has been. I do like the idea of wrapping up the year and starting a new one. Like that's an enticing thought to me. But this year I was a bit more aware that I didn't have a healthy modeling in terms of a healthy way of reflecting and wrapping up something and welcoming a new thing. And I think that comes a lot from the realm of the complex trauma world. And I feel like if you're a childhood trauma survivor, just things like that get wrecked and there's not a healthy model around it. So for me, it was a lot of fear around that holiday, historically speaking. And there wasn't a sense of, oh, let's reflect on how the year went and let's reflect on what we can do better next year or what things we would like to see next year. Like, I know there's a cultural thing for the resolutions, and I've done some of those quote-unquote reflections before, but quite frankly, resolutions don't tend to be very effective with me. And at this point, it's been a few years since I kind of let go of the whole resolutions mindset. I've been toying every year with what to name it, and I think last year it might have been goals or something like that. And in fact, I actually heard back last year's episode where I was reflecting on 2023 and welcoming 2024. And it was quite an interesting episode to hear. For starters, I like the idea of reflecting. That was something that I really enjoyed. And I think I will definitely try to keep doing something like this every year where I do a reflection on one of the episodes. It was a little heartbreaking to hear how many things I wanted to get done in 2024, especially because at that time, I had an injury, and I was under some medications that were masking the pain I was in pretty well. So I had a lot of goals, and it was just hard to say here now, listening to myself a year ago, ready to do all these things, and part of me was like, oh, sweetie, oh, you don't know. We're going to end up doing like physical therapy for a while, and we're going to be limited for a bit. And it's going to suck. It's going to be painful. But I can also say that I have put in a lot of work and time and dedication to improving my condition and recover. And I am proud for that. And I'm still working on it. But I can definitely feel the improvement of the work I've put in along with my medical team. So if New Year's Eve and New Year's Day is a little complicated for you, I want to share with you a few things. I want to share with you how I went about doing this transition this year for myself. And I also want to share what I'm going to call the Epiphanies of 2024, because I personally need reminders of my own epiphanies. Even hearing last year's episode, I was just like, gosh, I forget. I honestly know I've said this before, and I will say it again. I constantly forget the things I learn, the things I realize. My brain is, quite frankly, it is magnificent, and it can be very frustrating sometimes. And it's just, what's going on up here is wild. It really is. So I also want to point out that for trauma survivors, saying goodbye tends to be wrecked. Periods of transition tend to be stressful, tend to be a time where abusers might be acting up a little bit more than usual, and it causes a lot of feelings. This year, as a trauma survivor that was at home with the freedom, which I realize is also a privilege that I have, I did have the freedom to choose how I wanted to spend my day. And I did a few new things this year that I really, really liked. I felt they were very impactful. They helped me connect with my inner kiddo. And I want to go ahead and share those with you in case you can find them helpful. So my inner kiddo and I did a few games this year as we were transitioning. And the games were done via the dialoguing technique. And little recap, dialoguing technique is this journaling technique where you are writing in a journal using your dominant hand to represent your inner adult, and then you're responding with your non-dominant hand writing as your inner child. So the first game I played with my inner kiddo was, what did we like about 2024? And I went first, and I named one thing that I liked. And then she went, and we took turns naming things we liked. And that was a really cool way to reflect on the year. There were some things that I had forgotten about. And it also kind of stayed in our minds in terms of, even after I was done playing the game and I was done dialoguing, like maybe a few hours later, I would remember a new thing. And it definitely made me more aware, and it helped me notice a little bit more of the good things that did happen this past year. Then we played a game, which was, what did we not like about 2024? And that turned into what things did we hate about 2024? And a lot of stuff came out there. And that was interesting too. And I feel like if I would have not dialogued, I would have said that overall the year was horrendous and nothing good happened. But this exercise helped me become aware of the duality of the experience of what the year was for me. And don't get me wrong, there were some really hard shit that I went through that I definitely want to go through again. And there were also some really good things that I went through that I would like to see again, and that I'm glad happened that year. Then I did more cartoons and like kids content on the night to give my inner kiddo a sense of feeling like her presence in the room mattered, and it wasn't like just I haven't podcasted in a while, and I forget this happens here. Oh, I just put a piece together. Damn. I'll share. I'm gonna share it. Just a second to gather myself here. Oh God, let me tell you this. The inner kiddo is fascinating. It really is how this stuff comes out. I didn't even realize that's why it mattered till now. The reason it mattered to put in an actual cartoon for my inner kiddo that day, so she would feel like she had a say and her presence was being acknowledged and tended to in the room is because growing up, I had to often get on board with whatever other people were watching on TV. It was a lot easier for me to be like, oh, well, watch whatever you want to watch, and to just sit there. And even though I wasn't enjoying it that much, just pretend that I was, so I could at least have a crap of connection. And I had a tendency to wait until I was on my own to actually put on whatever I wanted to watch. Damn. And I'm so glad I realized that now, because now I'm definitely going to be more aware of it, hopefully. Okay, so that was definitely helpful. Almost missed midnight. I got caught up with watching TV and I almost missed the actual switch, but I didn't. And then the next day on New Year's Day, I did a third game via dialoguing, which was, what do we want to see in 2025? And that was really helpful. I definitely dig it more than resolutions or goals. I like the intention of sitting with myself and actually tuning in into what I deeply want inside my heart, and not what society says I should be doing at this age, or what the commercials are saying I should be striving for, or what other people around me are achieving. Like, more of like, what does my inner most authentic self need and want? And speaking of needs and wants, that day there was a lot of checking in with my inner kiddo. What do you need? What do you want? Do we want to watch Bluey? Do we want to lay on the mat? Do we want to do yoga? Do we want to dialogue? Do you want extra stickers? Like, what can I do to make you feel better? That was the question. That was the piece that really helped me soothe her. This might be one of the very first times in New Year's Eve where I did not feel as rattled by the trauma as I usually do. Like this particular year, I felt a lot more calm. And still, I still got complex PTSD. I still got trauma that I need to recover from. That's still there. But there was this sense of feeling more empowered and feeling more connected that I really liked. And it has stayed with me a bit during these first days of the year too. I have noticed myself getting more things done. I have noticed myself feeling a little bit more courageous and more willing to be myself. I have been receiving intuitively some, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like I can feel a pull that this year is offering me in terms of being more of myself and showing up more authentically, including here in this platform. I sometimes grieve the fact that this podcast, I was so scared to start it and to get in trouble and to regret doing something like this, that I kind of didn't go fully in. Like, if you've been with me since the beginning, you might have noticed that there's a lot of hesitation. It's almost like that metaphor with the cat, like a cat that's in a new environment, like, is very hesitant to go through the whole thing like quickly. Like, they take their time and, you know, they'll maybe put a paw over there and like quickly back away and see if anything happens. And there's a lot of hypervigilance and a lot of caution with exploring. And I kind of feel like I've been doing that with this podcast and pretty much with anything in my life, but definitely with this podcast. Like, I started and, you know, I didn't post a lot and I didn't say, like, the episodes were shorter, and I would try not to promote, like, I would promote a little bit, but not too much. And I feel like a part of me still, if I am honest, the big fear is, if for some reason I were to blow up somehow, somebody's gonna come after me. Like, there's no way this is safe. And I still feel that viscerally. And it holds me back. It holds me back in so many ways. And I do wanna highlight the fact that I personally believe that was a very important part of my process, and I needed to be that cautious, and it was an okay thing to be that cautious at the beginning, because it's a big deal. This is a big deal. Like, this is a podcast on my life. Like, looking back, I still wouldn't do it differently, but I can recognize how much the trauma was running me back then and how it has been loosening some of its hold on me as I keep doing this. This year, I don't know, there's something about how I feel right now that is like, I think I'm starting to feel a little bit more ready to take a bigger risk and say more, kind of dive in and see what happens. We'll see how that goes. All right, so here are my 2024 epiphanies. I realized that radical acceptance is not just for the abusers. I've been hearing about radical acceptance for now years, okay? And the way radical acceptance had been useful to me so far was in terms of helping me come to terms with the fact that I cannot save my abusers, I cannot change them, they can't change unless they want to. And even if they wanted to, the change that would be needed for them to be full time in my life is not very likely. Radical acceptance has been like a very painful piece of the puzzle when it comes to my healing. And I didn't realize that I could have radical acceptance with other things, including myself. So I'm listening to Dr. Ramani Durvasula's latest book, which is called It's Not You. And in it, Dr. Ramani started talking about having radical acceptance for us, our flaws, challenges, strengths, weaknesses, attributes, like accepting ourselves fully and radically without shaming some parts of ourselves while embracing others. Like that blew my mind because the concept of like accepting all parts, including the parts that we don't like. And I also started realizing recently that I can apply that radical acceptance to things like my phobia of insects. One of the reasons I get so rattled up, my phobia goes haywire, is because I want to get to a point where I live in a place where there's no fucking way an insect can ever make it here. There's no way. There's no window, there's no door, there's no air vent, nothing. It's impossible. They hate my place, they see it, and they go running the other way. Well, that's not realistic, isn't it? So every time I see one, I feel like I failed and now I'm in danger and I let myself down and I need to get this to stop so I don't ever see one ever again. And radical acceptance, if I apply it in this situation, is accepting that, like, sure, if there's a lot, I need pest control in here. And I do get the landlord to call them and they treat the place. And I wouldn't say I am in a dire situation, like, definitely not like some other situations I was in growing up. But it is kind of part of the human experience to see insects out there. Outside, I don't mind them. And sometimes they get inside. And I feel like this one's going to be something that I will test more in the summertime when there's a little bit more appearances. Like right now in the winter, they go hibernate and they get slower and you don't see as many, knock on wood. I hope to freaking goodness I did not just jinx myself saying that here. But yeah, like I feel like even the anticipatory anxiety has gone down a little bit. That shift in my mind of, wait a second, I'm not supposed to find a place that is completely bug-free. It's more of a, what do I do when I see one? Like, I take care of it. I take care of it right away. And I call who I need to call so they can spray and treat the place. Like, I'm doing the things. And that just kind of dawned on me recently that radical acceptance can really help me with that. Another epiphany I had this year, and this is more of like an epiphany that hits me in waves, but a big wave hit me this year, like towards the end of 2024 into the beginning of this year. It's all about the emotions. I've known this, sort of, kind of. I'm really, really beginning to understand how important emotions are for this, for my recovery and for helping to manage my symptoms. I don't think I realized how much I have been neglecting my own emotional experience until recently. And also in combination with the radical acceptance of myself, right? Like that piece of radically accepting me with the flaws, with all the things that I don't like, and accepting all my emotions, even the ones that I don't like. Like if I combine those two pieces, I feel like that captures, in a nutshell, how I became so sick. I wanted to control everything, including my own experience. And I wanted to be so perfect that it made me sick. It made me so sick, and it has almost killed me so many times. My inability to accept myself as I am and to not quickly judge myself and go into self-deprecation mode. Like my tendency to go so quickly to a place of I am a horrific and horrendous human being and I should be living in the deepest of shame. I feel like that's the root of my complex PTSD. That piece is buried so deep on top of so many layers is not going to be something I will be fixing in 2 days. I know that. I'm fully aware. But it's almost like like I somehow gained the ability to like see through all the layers that I'm still working through, and like somehow I've been shown the core. That's what it feels like. Like this is the core. If we can keep working and get to that core, things can really turn around for us. And I hope I don't forget this. Along the lines of that core, honoring my needs is not selfish. It's healthy. I noticed this year, the more I honored what I wanted and what I needed, the better I felt. The less OCD, the less anxiety, the more I could focus on things. Another epiphany I had was that allowing my body and brain to have recovered time after a tough interaction, instead of white knuckling myself through it, was what I needed. I feel like a lot of my OCD and my anxiety and a lot of my mental illness has come from, like, if I have a tough interaction with someone who's abusive or acting really off, I try to act like that didn't happen, and I try to like act like it didn't impact me, and I really, really strive to just move on to the next moment and just be as productive as I have ever been. And like accepting that it's actually not a normal reaction to do that. Like the normal reaction would be to be thrown off for a few minutes and to need some recovery time before I can move on to the next thing. And the thing with that is, where I get stuck with that sometimes is, I do feel guilt if an interaction causes me to spend too much time recovering from it. And let me expand on that for a moment. Sometimes if I have a really horrible interaction and it takes me a minute to get back to the next thing, I perceive it as me punishing the other person for acting that way. I'm starting to frame that as, I'm not punishing them. This is the life consequence. And when I say punishing, it means, after the interaction, I might need to step away and like, I don't know, go to the bathroom or do something like that and like deprive them from having more access to me. Like when I set that boundary, I still struggle with feeling the guilt of like, am I punishing them? Is this a punishment for having treated me that way? Like, does that make me like them? And you can appreciate how I go on OCD spirals about stuff like this. And lately, it has been very helpful to stop myself from kind of OCDing my way through it and just go, wait a second, like, that is the real life consequence. Like when you treat someone like that, they do need to step away. You're not punishing them. You're protecting yourself. But even as I'm saying that right now, it still feels like I'm punishing them. Like it's really weird. But that has been a very helpful epiphany that I hope to work on a little bit more this year to integrate. Another epiphany I've had is more about my self-discovery, like who I am in terms of what I like, how I want to show up in the world. And it has to do with colors. Like I've discovered that I love colors a lot. I, historically speaking, was that person that would like tend to have my hair dark and would wear a lot of dark colors. Not that there's a right or wrong way, but lately I've been feeling more me with more colors. And I got these really colorful glasses this past year, and I've been exploring with colors with my hair. And I still have a lot of dark clothes in my closet, but if I was to tune in with something that I do want to explore more this year, is probably with getting new clothes and things that are a little bit more, I don't know, more me. And see how that goes. The last epiphany I will share is, and this is something that came to me right as I was doing the transition to the new year. I want to live my life being, not doing. I have lived my entire life doing. And in many ways, I know I'm going to be doing a lot of things because that's still very much a trauma response for me. But I want to start spending more time, start to flip the script a little bit and tip the scales and spend this upcoming year being. The last thing I want to share before I wrap up this episode are the 2 holiday gifts I gave to myself. It was one gift for my adult self and one gift for my inner kiddo. The gift to my adult self is a book by Dr. Michael Alsay, and I might have been butchering the pronunciation of his last name, so if you're listening to this, my apologies. Dr. Alsay has a new book called The Upside of OCD, Flip the Script to Reclaim Your Life. Oh my gosh, guys. My brain has been blown so far. I'm not done. I'm like almost halfway through, which for me, with how much of a slow reader I am, that's like a big deal. I am putting together so many pieces. And if you have OCD, or you have a loved one with OCD, or if you're someone treating people with OCD, this is a must read. This book brings awareness to a really important piece that I think needs to be recognized when treating people with OCD, which is the emotional component of OCD. And I won't go into more details now because I'm still reading it, so I don't fully understand it. But so far, the piece that has really drawn me in is learning to give space to the emotion that is behind the OCD spiral. And what I'm gathering so far is when you can do that, when you can see it fully, it actually can help loosen the grip. And I've been trying to create more awareness. And quite frankly, even the process of asking myself what emotions and like just letting them be for a moment, like, okay, I can feel anger. I can feel sadness right now. All right, let's do it. It tends to stop the spiral. Like, and as someone who has had OCD for many, many years, I can say that that's been big. Like, I haven't had an actual OCD specialist treat me, and I have not done a lot of the mainstream treatments, but I have done elements of it. And I will say, like, between what I've done so far and this new approach, like, this actually is making me feel better. So stay tuned for more as I read this book, and I will be linking it to the show notes. I also want to share what I got my inner kiddo this year. And this is something that I've been meaning to get to myself. And the fact that I have complex trauma doesn't help, because when I'm trying to shop for something, if there's too many options, I get overwhelmed and I can't get anything. And this has happened a few times, but this particular season I was like, I'm gonna just pick one and I'm gonna order it, and it's gonna come and it's gonna be my holiday present. And let me tell you, am I so glad that I did that this year. And the gift is this beautiful, fluffy, wonderful, soft rainbow manatee. Why a manatee? Because when I was little, I had a little stuffed mini manatee called Skeeper. And Skeeper went with me everywhere. If I was sick, Skeeper would hang out on my chest, chill with me while I was recovering when I was little. And I took Skeeper to see Lion King. And Skeeper was on my lap. And then the movie ended, and I get up and I'm leaving. And as I head out of the movie theater, I realized Skeeper's not on me. And we went back and we looked for Skeeper, and the employees helped us look for Skeeper, and Skeeper was nowhere to be found. And it broke my heart. That might be like the one time when I really remember vividly, like being very upset about losing something that young. And Lion King was the first movie I ever remember going to see in the movie theater. Like, I loved the movie. It's just such a shame that it also became the day I lost Skeeper. And I've thought about Skeeper, and I decided to get this new rainbow Skeeper because it's so colorful. It's wonderful. If you have social media, I will post on Instagram a picture of Skeeper so you can see the new rainbow Skeeper that has joined the family here at Hello Trauma Brain. And Skeeper was delayed. They arrived on New Year's Eve day, actually. Yeah. And let me tell you, I think that was part of the reason also that day felt better for me. Like, just having that gift arrive from my inner kiddo and getting to hug Rainbow Skeeper and dialoguing and connecting with her and watching cartoons. Like, it was just such a lovely way to start off the year. Like, wrapping up 2024, which was a hard year for me and my inner kiddo, and starting this new one. And yeah, Rainbow Skeeper and this new book from Dr. Michael Alsay. Those were my gifts this year. And let me tell you, I loved it. I loved it. I want to make giving holiday gifts to me and my inner kiddo a thing every year if I am able. And that is how I did it. That's how I transitioned this year. I don't know how this year is going to go for me. All I know is that, I have a good feeling. I'm having an intuition that things can really get better for me this year. And I hope they do. I also hope they do for you too. I am well aware that if you are listening to this content, things might be very rough for you too. May they not be, but if they are, I really hope that you're able to find things that help you feel better and help honor your needs. You are good and worthy as you are. None of us are perfect. We're not supposed to be perfect. And yeah, with that being said, I am wrapping with this episode the second half of season 2 of Hello Trauma Brain. Stay tuned. In a few weeks, we'll continue the season. And I will announce on Instagram and on the bio site when the new episode will come out. It'll be on a Thursday still, but which Thursday to be determined. And until then, I'm wishing you so well. And I really hope that this year treats you with all the kindness, all the love, peace, clarity that you deserve. And whatever happens, please know, I am so glad that you are here. In this week's healing invitation, I want to invite you to do a similar reflection to what I did with my inner kiddo. Feel free to use the dialoguing technique where you are using your dominant hand to represent your inner adult and your non-dominant hand to represent your inner kiddo. Or you can do this while you're walking or in any way that feels good to you. I invite you to reflect on what did you like about last year? What did you not like about 2024? If you had a say, what would you like to see in 2025? Once you've done these exercises, if they are written, I invite you to read them back again and see if anything draws your attention. Transitions can be very complicated, and I do believe that having a healthier way to reflect on our experiences can help us see things from a bigger picture as opposed to focusing just on a few things. Maybe this will help you think of some things you had forgotten happened last year, or even some things that you forgot you would have loved to see coming up. Please let me know how this week's healing invitation goes if you choose to accept it. Before we wrap up this episode, all music and production is courtesy of yours truly. Also, I want to share a few ways you can support this podcast to reach more survivors that could benefit from finding this content. You can subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or the platform you are using to listen. Share this episode with anyone you think can find this content helpful. Follow Hello Trauma Brain on Instagram, subscribe to the Hello Trauma Brain YouTube channel, and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I post a new episode. Also, you can make a donation via PayPal. No worries, all links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. I wish you the best as you make your transition into the new year. It is time for our farewell affirmations. I invite you to repeat after me. I welcome the belief that I am enough. I am lovable. And I deserve to heal. I wish you a gentle week and thank you for your presence.